今日はまず留学生の皆さん、それから日本の皆さん、環境的観点から少しお話まず聞いてから会場からもご質問を受けたいと思います。それじゃあジンバブエからのベネディクト。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Benedict, and I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm affiliated with the Ministry of Mines and Mining Development in Zimbabwe. I'm currently a master's student at Resources Engineering, majoring in rock engineering at Kyushu University. So my talk this morning is going to be briefly on ASGM, which stands for Artisanal Small-Scale Gold Mining. ASGM is basically concerned with recovery or extraction of gold from sediments by using an advanced technology. It is basically gold mining by individuals or small enterprises with little capital, little or minimum capital investment, as well as minimum production. So this ASGM sector has been growing in developing countries, mainly in Africa, which are minerally endowed, particularly with gold. Some countries are including Zimbabwe. And this sector has been growing extensively because of poverty, unemployment, as well as, most importantly, the high price of gold. So in Zimbabwe particularly, collectively, the ASGM sector delivers gold to the central bank in figures that are comparative with the large-scale gold mining sector. So it shows the importance of the ASGM sector in the economy as it contributes significantly to the GDP of the country. So this gold that is targeted by the ASGM sector, mainly it's alluvial gold, which usually occurs in riverbeds. They target the bedrock gold, which usually occurs in what we call brimstone belts or metamorphic belts. But in Zimbabwe, more than 80% of the gold that is targeted by ASGM is recovered from the bedrock, where they develop underground mining operations. So in these underground operations, the ASGM actually targets old closed mines, or they develop their own underground excavations where they work under dangerous mining conditions, risks of rock falls, mine flooding, and even being trapped underground. So after recovering the gold ore from either the surface or underground operations, the ore is crushed. So to recover the gold from the sediments, from the crushed sediments, they use mercury. Mercury in Zimbabwe is very accessible and inexpensive, but it is important for the ASGM sector because it is very efficient in recovering the gold, because mercury melts the gold from the sediments and forms an amalgam. So for you to recover the gold, you just have to burn the amalgam and vaporize the mercury. Ordinarily, the mining regulations require the miners to actually use an amalgam retort when they are burning the mercury amalgam, which basically involves burning the amalgam, vaporizing it, condensing, and collecting it for reuse. But unfortunately, that is not commonly practiced. With the rates of the growth of ASGM sector, particularly in Zimbabwe and other developing countries in Africa, it leads also to an increased use of mercury. But mercury, if not handled very well, it is very toxic to the human life as well as the environment. Because in burning the amalgam and vaporizing the mercury, the miners are exposed to inhalation of mercury, which has very high risk, which damages the immune system, the digestive system, as well as the nervous system, if inhaled to high levels. Also because the mining operations use a lot of water, so there is a very high risk of contaminating water with mercury. And this mercury eventually or consequently it is then found in fish. So if ingested, mercury can cause the Minamata disease, which is characterized by symptoms including convulsions, loss of muscle coordination, damage of sight, hearing and speech. Now, most importantly is that in these gold operations, also women are involved. And unfortunately, this mercury can cause women to give birth to kids that are already affected by the disease before they're even born. So to conclude my speech, I'll propose that we as developing countries in Africa, we need an extensive or rigorous education, training and awareness campaigns on the use of mercury and its effect to the human life, the environment, and most importantly to the future generations, which is affected through kids who might be born affected by the use of mercury. And finally, probably looking into technologies that are an alternative to using mercury in mining. With that said, thank you.
じゃあもう次にお話を聞きましょう。今いろんなお話。水銀というのはとっても特殊な非常に便利ないろんな性質を持っている。もう地球上にある120ほどの元素というのがありますけど、それも全部今数年前に全て分かりました。で中には日本で、作った日本ニウムっていうのもあるんですけど、水銀というのは80番目の元素です。で金は79番目、お隣です。だからいろんないい性質があって、唯一普通の温度で液体の元素なんですよ。だから使いやすいんですよ。液体の金属、使いやすいんですよ。だからいろんなことに使ってやさっき伊勢さんの話もありましたし、アフリカでもね、金を取り出すのにっていうのが起こるんですよね。だけど新しい技術を作らないと、もうとてもじゃないけどっていうようなことも起こってますよということで、また次の話になる。
Your Excellency and other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, protocol has been observed. My name is Leeme. I come from Botswana and I am currently studying environmental engineering in Kyushu University. Today I'll talk about two things, e-waste or electronic waste, and just briefly on healthcare waste. So the electronic waste or e-waste has become a serious health hazard for much of the developing world, including Africa. So in 2019, about 53 million metric tons of e-waste was produced the world over, and only about 17% of this e-waste was collected and recycled properly. And out of this 53 million metric tons, only about 3 million tons come from Africa. yet the majority of the e-waste finds its way to the African continent. And West African countries, like we saw in the slide before, have unfortunately become renowned for being the e-waste dump of the world, because they receive the majority of e-waste coming from developed countries. Now, although there are a number of conventions and treaties, such as the Basel Convention and the Bamako Convention, that prohibit the import of such hazardous waste, developed countries have found a loophole of declaring this e-waste as second-hand goods and exporting them to African countries. However, it is estimated that about 70% of these goods, when arriving in Africa, are unfixable, and they just end up going to the dump site. At the dump site, we can find children working there as young as 10 years old, sometimes even 9 years old. And this e-waste is burned openly, because this burning melts away the plastic components of the waste, and the metal component, which is what they are looking for, is remaining behind after burning the plastic. But unfortunately, burning this big waste produces very harmful smoke, very thick, harmful smoke, which contains, among other things, dioxins and furans, mercury products, and other pollutants. And these pollutants, they not only pollute the air, but they also pollute the surrounding water and surrounding soil. Now, since today we are actually commemorating the Day of the African Child, children are found to be more susceptible to these toxins, largely due to two reasons. The first reason being children's organs are still developing and immune systems are still developing. So they are quite fragile, and exposure to these toxins is very bad for them. And the second reason is the proximity of children to these toxins, because the toxins are on the ground and on the soil, on the water, and this is where children like to play. So the exposure is quite high in children, and this exposure causes a lot of complications, as mentioned earlier, such as nervous damage, which may lead to the Minamata disease, respiratory damage, which can cause asthma, and other carcinogenic effects. Now, the reason why African countries accept this e-waste is that it generates quite a lot of revenue. It is estimated that in the year 2019 alone, the raw materials that were obtained from this e-waste generated about $3.8 billion for the African continent. With a country like Ghana, for example, creating employment for more than 200,000 people. Although this employment, of course, is not a formal employment. So really stopping this requires a global, international effort. And lastly, I would just like to touch on healthcare waste. Several medical equipment in Africa still contain mercury, such as the thermometers and the blood pressure monitoring machines. And unfortunately, Africa doesn't have the technologies to recycle these waste properly. So a lot of this waste ends up at the dump sites or landfills, or being incinerated in very old, outdated incinerators, which are more like just chimneys there that burn the waste. And this burning also produces the same toxins that I mentioned earlier. And in conclusion, well, actually, this is why the Minamata Convention, for example, is very important for Africa and African countries. Yeah, thank you.
ウガンダ出身の伊賀です。伊勢先生、パネリストの皆さん、ありがとうございました。そうですね、伊勢先生のプレゼン、非常に熱意が入ったプレゼンでして、分かりやすかったです。ちなみにですね、そのプレゼン、あるいは似たようなもの、どっかにこう、ね、インターネットに載せているものがあれば、ぜひ教えてください。またね、自分の勉強、復習のためにもう一回見てみたいです。で、あと質問が3つあります。1つは伊勢先生なんですけれども、要は、水銀が非常に便利で、こういろんな工程に使われるんですけれども、代わりのものを、見つける必要があります。そういった、代わりの技術、存在するものなんですのかな、それともまだやっぱり開発中段階なのかというのが質問です。で、2つ目はベネディクトさんの例の質問が、This is for Benedict. You mentioned that your government is doing some sensitization, but of course I believe, but you also mentioned that still many of the big part of the population is using Mercury to carry out this gold mining. Do you know of any reason why the public is not embracing the sensitization the government is doing? Do you see cases of similar to Minamata bill in the community? Are they happening, or you suspect they are yet to happen? That's all. Thank you.
では、ベネディクトさんから先に答えますか。どうぞ。
Thank you for your question. And then people, some are aware, I would like to say, but most importantly, the miners, when they amalgamate their gold and when they are burning the amalgam to recover the gold, they want to see what is happening because of fears of being robbed of something. Secondly, it's easy. It's easier for them because an alternative to using mercury is to use some concentrating technologies which require intensive capital investment, which is actually operated by the large-scale miners. So the small-scale miners, because of poverty, they would rather recover the gold so that they can eat at that particular time.
They take the risk.
Sure.
Are we seeing cases in our communities of people falling sick, or is this something we're going to see in like 10 years to come?
Well, I believe that it's maybe there may be a few cases that I'm not aware of, but I think with time, because it accumulates, it's bioaccumulative. So if there is no change, I'm scared that maybe we will start seeing serious impact of the use of mercury.
Thank you.
じゃあ、僕からもう答えるね。今日本は電池にしても何にしてもみんな違う方法を使ってというのが一つ動いてる。地球上にたくさんある物質を使いながら 今までと同じようなことをやるっていう研究も一方ではあります。もう一つは同じように使うんだけども、その取り出し方が水銀を使わないという今の場合はね、方法というのを考えて研究をしているというのもあります。
今ですね、国連ユネックで進めているのはですね、この金の採掘の場合はいきなり水銀の使用を禁止すると困る人たちがいます。ですから、そのある一つの技術、グッドプラクティスを教えていく。それはですね、水銀を使わざるを得ないんですよ。使ってもいいんだけど、それを金を取り出した後にですね、リトルトっていうんですけれども、水の中で水銀をリサイクルして使う、取り出して使ったものを流さない、何回も同じ水銀を使う、そういう方法をね、今国連では教育をしています。なかなか広がりませんけどね、それは一つで、それ例えば体温計は日本のメーカーが発明しまして、電子体温計に変えていきます。電子血圧計を開発しましたので、電子血圧計も開発されました。それから蛍光灯もですね、日本の技術者の発明で LED ですね、発光ダイオッド、これが発明されて、これも、もう蛍光灯は製造していけなくなりますから、水俣条約で販売はできるんですけど、市場にあるものはなくなるまでは販売できる。だけれども作っちゃいけないということですね。それから電池はもう日本で売られている電池は全て水銀フリーです。ダイソー、それからセブンイレブンでも必ずゼロマーキュリーって書いてあります。ただ外国で補聴器を買ってきたとき、それに電池が入っているのにはまだ水銀が入っている。ですからそういうことを水俣条約で水銀フリーにしていくということが大切だと思います。
プラスチックはないですよね。プラスチックもリサイクルしますよって、そういういろんなやり方がもちろんありますよということの中で考えていかないといけない。じゃあ、
All right, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and the good education on environment. I have a statement and also a question. My statement is actually an appeal. I want to appeal to the Japanese government. If there is a way that we can collaborate with the African continent to set up, let's say, laboratories that can, for instance, detect this pollution in the air. Because there is a saying from where I come from that it is good to show someone how to fish than to fish for the best or to eat the best in the fish. If you set up these factories, for instance, my brother mentioned the second-hand goods like cars that we import to Africa, and I don't think they become waste products. Can we have plants like Honda, Toyota to set up in African countries where they produce these cars, so we don't end up importing the second-hand stuff into the country, but we use the plants we have in Africa that have produced the new equipment that we can use for a very long time. And I know when you set up this plant, definitely you're supposed to set up a facility that will control the release of these chemicals into our environment. So I want to appeal to the government, if you can set up, some of these plants that produce these electrical appliances, okay, in Africa, so that we don't, come and depend on the Western countries again for the second-hand goods, but rather we produce it on our continent. So that's my first appeal to the government. Then I have a question. The question is, I want to know, is China part of UN? I just want to know, why am I asking this question? I'm talking as a Ghanaian because in Ghana now we have Chinese in Ghana. This is an issue that people don't want to talk about, but it's a big issue. We have foreigners that Chinese who are in Ghana and who are into illegal gold mining. So as a country, if you are trying to prevent your citizens from doing illegal gold mining, and then you see foreigners who are also doing illegal gold mining. How do you tell your citizens to stop it? They won't stop because already foreigners are doing it. So me as a citizen, why can't I do same? So they also continue the illegal gold mining. But I believe Japan is a member of the UN, right? We are also a member of the G7. So your opinion also matters. So the question I ask, is China part of UN? Is UN should probably do something about the Chinese doing this illegal mining in Africa. And during the presentation, he also mentioned that Mercury is not decomposed. So maybe today, Japan may think that what is happening in Africa may not concern them, but it will trickle down. The Mercury will eventually end too. It will travel globally, and you also begin to have the effect. So I want to know, is China part of UN, and what is UN doing about the Chinese infiltrating and doing the illegal mining in Africa? Thank you very much.
中国もこの水俣コンベンションのメンバーです。自国内ではですね、この、守ろうということで努力をしています。しかしながら、外国、つまりアフリカの国連の条約には強制力、罰則規定がないんですよ。罰則規定がないから強制することはできない。ですから、もしあなたの国で環境基準がなかったら、それは環境基準がなかったら緩くなりますから排出をしてしまうというのは、日本の企業だってありえるんですよね。日本の企業だってアフリカに行って、そこの環境基準が弱かったら、その基準に合わせてやるかもしれません。ですから、一番大切なのは、国連には強制力はないので、これみんなで一緒にやろうという呼びかけはできるんですけれども、私たちが一番重要なのは、皆さんが国に帰って、その政府の人たちを動かすということが一番大切なんです。ですから、今40カ国が水俣条約に入っているという話をしましたけども、入るのはある程度できます。しかしながら、入って国内法を変えますよね。あなたの企業はこういうことしちゃいけませんよ。企業が出てきたときには公害を起こさないような取り決めをします。そういうことをそれぞれのアフリカの国、54カ国の国がありますけれども、その国々が独自の環境基準を作ったり協力してですね、いい企業を選んできてもらう、そういうふうなことを難しいんですけども、していかざるを得ない、するしかないというふうに私は思います。
とっても難しい、簡単ではない。でもみんなで協力できるかどうかにかかっているんです。だからそれぞれが本当にできることをしっかりやっていかないと、言葉は気楽に言いますけど、実現して現実にしていくっていうのはものすごく難しいけども、だけどそれがこれからの我々のチャレンジなんだから、そこのところはいろんな知恵を出して乗り切っていく、克服していかないといけないということだろうと。
一つだけ追加していいでしょうか。一つだけ追加したいのは、この水俣条約はですね、ずっと世界中の国が反対してたんです。この条約を作ることには。ところが、オバマさんが賛成したんです。オバマさんが賛成するまではどこの国も賛成していなかったんですよ。これ大きなことです。オバマさんは水俣病のことを本で読んでて、そしてアメリカは水俣条約に賛成するというふうに彼は命令を出して、それまでのブッシュ大統領は反対してたんですけど、それで水俣条約は一気に世界を動かして、約140カ国がですね、水俣条約で合意したと。ですから、この水俣条約というのは、オバマさんとアフリカの国と非常に密接に水俣というのは結びついていることを最後に強調したいと思います。
リーダーも大事だけど、それを支える人も大事で、みんなで本当に自分がってやったらうまくいかない。みんなの他の人のためにという、そういう観点でやっていくことができれば、おそらくいろんなものが変わっていく。 今非常に難しい時代になっている、それをやっていくの。だけどそれをやっていけるかどうかに人類の将来がかかっているよということも確かなんで、そこも一緒に考えていかないといけないねということだけ申し上げて、ちょっと時間が随分伸びて申し訳ありません。いろんな質問まだいっぱいあると思います。この会が終わった後にまた議論を続けられればいいと思いますし、改めて留学生、学生の皆さんのプレゼン、素晴らしいプレゼンに対してお礼を申し上げて、この会を閉じます。ありがとうございました。